Alright, so to make this hat for the plague mask that I made in the last video, you're going to need 3 sheets of 5mm foam, EVA craft foam of some sort, and some stuff to cut with like X-Acto knives and scissors, and some adhesives like hot glue, super glue, and contact cement. And to make this, I went about it as simply as possible. And what I did was I found the center point of the foam, which is about 6 inches, and I cut it straight down the middle. And then from there I just trimmed a little bit off of it until I felt like it was the right height. And I literally figured this out by just standing in front of the mirror and looking at it and just figuring out how high I personally want it to be, because I don't want it to look like a top hat. That would just look silly. And the one strip of this cut in half just wasn't enough, so I did have to glue several together. From there I just wrapped it around my head with the mask on. And once I figured out where I wanted it, I just cut it. And next, I'm going to close this loop to make the top part of the hat by joining these two ends together. And I'm going to glue them the same way that I put the other initial pieces together, which is with some contact cement. This stuff works great on foam, and it's also pretty flexible. So when you use the heat gun, you can stretch and move the foam around as you like with it. And here is my circle glued together. Now, as you can see, it's totally round, and people's heads aren't totally round. So next, I'm going to use a heat gun, and I'm going to heat this whole entire piece, and it's going to come out looking more oval whenever I'm done than round. Right, and here it is with the shape I wanted after I went ahead and heated it using a heat gun. I just ran the heat gun on the inside of either end and compressed it. And once it cooled, I just tried it on with the mask to make sure that it fit and my measurements were correct. Alright, so now that I have this to the shape of my head that I wanted, I went and put this slight curvature in it, as you can see. And I did this by heating the top edge and using my hands to crimp it. And I went around it literally 3-4 times. I didn't get it too hot, just hot enough that I could manipulate it. And I took my time to make sure that it was even and crisp as possible all the way around. On the bottom, it has a slight angle, but nothing like the top. Next, I'm going to place this in the center of 2 sheets of the 5mm thick foam, and I'm going to draw on one the outline of where I want the brim to be. I'm going to cut that out, flip it over on the other one, and cut out the opposite side. Alright, I cut out my ring, and then I flipped it over onto the other sheet of EVA foam and cut out another identical ring. And next, I'm going to join these two together with some contact cement. Alright, now that I have both sides glued together, I'm going to center this, and you can check this by using a ruler and going around each side and make sure you pretty much have it in the center as exactly as you can. I'm going to draw a line around this outside here. I'm going to cut that out slightly smaller with an X-Acto knife just on the inside of the line that I've drawn. Okay, so I cut out the centerpiece where I traced around the outside of the top of the hat. And I've gone ahead and fitted the hat into the opening. And I used the table and the hat to help push it as flush as possible. And next, to attach this, I'm going to run some super glue along the inside here. And a nice thick bead to help hold this brim in place. Alright, so there it is. See, I put a pretty heavy bead of super glue all around in that gap. Now, if you're wondering why I didn't just straight apply the glue to the inside of the brim or the outside of the hat itself, I really wanted to get this as perfectly straight as possible before I glued it into place. And super glue, you have a little bit of work time. Contact cement, you have no work time. The second you stick those two surfaces together, they're there. So this is what I decided to do. Initially, I thought about running a little bead of hot glue along on the inside here, but I decided against it. If I need to, I will, but otherwise I don't want to, just for cosmetic purposes. With the way this will sit with the mask on the person, nobody's going to see the underside of this really. just like nobody's going to see the top of the hat either unless you're super tall. But yeah, that's the reason why I did that. And another thing I wanted to talk about real quick, if you watch any of my other videos, I usually use colored foam. And you'll notice I have this trash bag here. That's so you can see the black on the camera. And the reason why I didn't use it is generally with any rubber compound, whether it's an EVA foam rubber or a car tire, bicycle tire, whatever, whenever you add pigment to the rubber and it's no longer black, it starts to soften and weaken. And if you've ever run colored bicycle tires, you'll know this. You do a couple skids and you've worn straight through the tire. So one thing that's nice about this and why I use it in a lot of my mask videos is whenever you heat this with the heat gun, it's really easy to put the definition into it, I feel, for eyebrows, cheekbones, things like that in the mask once you're assembling it. But for this, I really just wanted something stiff so it would hold its shape. I didn't want it to flex or bend too much or move. And once I seal all this here with the heat gun after everything's glued together, you know, this will stiffen up a little bit more too. But the black just has so much less give. But like I say, it doesn't show up very good on camera, so I don't use it. And this could all be in my head, but it just feels so much more tough than the other ones do. Alright, now that this has had time to fully dry, it took about 45 minutes. The brim's good and stuck on. I already took and did a quick once over with the heat gun on it. I need to do a couple more times because I can see you see the areas there where I missed and it hasn't quite gotten sealed. So still need to go over that again. But this piece that I cut out, I didn't throw away because this is now going to be the top. Get this in here. It's upside down. There we go. Okay, so as you can see, this is going to sit down in here a little bit. And I'm going to glue this in place from the inside with some hot glue. And then I'm going to run some silicone around this inside edge to smooth out the angle and take care of this gap after I go through and sand down some of the rougher edges up here. But first, I'm going to plug in my hot glue gun and I'm going to glue this into the inside. Alright, so I finished the hot glue and went and put this on in a mirror just to see how it would look. Put a pretty thick bead of hot glue around it to hold that top in. Now, I'm going to move on here. And next I'm going to start doing some sanding and some siliconing. I'm going to head out to the garage for that. I'm going to use the Dremel first on this edge. So I have my Dremel here. I have a sanding head on that's about a medium grit. And I put it around a little bit past 15. So it's rotating at a decent rate, but not too fast. And first I'm going to start on this outside edge here. Okay, and now that I have smoothed off the outside edge, I'm going to go ahead and smooth off the inside edge. I have the outside and inside edges sanded. I also plugged in my heat gun real quick and went back over this brim here. And you'll notice now in the front of it, it just goes down slightly because it sits on the mask and on your head kind of like this. And that way the front end goes down a little bit, makes it a little bit more menacing, a little bit more ominous. Okay, and I also took the Dremel real quick and sanded out some of these seams that I have on it. And next I'm going to go ahead and start with some siliconing up top here. Alright, so for the siliconing I use pretty much the same thing it seems like everybody else seems to use for the most part, which is DAP brand Alex Plus all-purpose acrylic latex caulk plus silicone. It's a mouthful. Whenever I get this, I put it in my caulking gun and I just squirt it out into a Tupperware so I can have for future use. Along with that, I also need a cup of water. And what I do is I get some of the silicone here on my finger, and then I literally just press and work it down into whatever I need it to fill. Okay, you can keep it in the caulking gun and do this, but I feel like it dries out and I end up losing it really quick. And then once I get enough in there, I wet my finger in the water and just use that to help smooth it out. I'm going to do that all the way around the hat. Alright, so I've worked myself about halfway around the hat here and I stopped. And the reason why is that I like to do one large area at once and then go through and apply my water and smooth it all out at once. And I need to let that dry, because if I try to put the silicone on, continuing from here when it's still all wet, it won't stick. It'll be a real hard time to get in there. It'll be a huge mess. I'm going to let this dry, come back, try to get the rest of it in one shot, but I may have to do it in 2 passes maybe. Okay, I've got the whole entire thing sealed and it's still pretty wet. It's going to take a few hours to dry before I can Mod Podge it and then paint it. But once this dries, I'll come back and I'm going to brush Mod Podge over the whole entire thing to seal it and then paint it with an airbrush. Right now I'm using a brush and some Mod Podge, and you can see I'm just putting it on real thick all over. I'm going to do the top, the side, and the brim. Once that's dry, I'll do the bottom too. Alright, I have my airbrush over here all loaded up with some opaque Createx black. I thinned this out a little bit. It's not the full consistency. And I got my airbrush set to about 40. And I'm going to go ahead and brush this up. Alright, and here is the finished hat now that it's painted. Now you'll notice that I didn't silicone this crease here. Had I had more time, I probably would have siliconed this crease and the one in the center. However, the person that's going to be wearing this hat, they're going to be over 6 feet. So, I mean, if you're tall enough to see the top of the hat, props to you, but I just kind of doubted it. Also, like the brim, didn't think it was super important to get out that seam, so I just left it there. That's something you can do. Now, from this point, you can pretty much add or do anything to it as far as if you want to put like a hat band with a buckle, or, I don't know, cut out some foam gears and make it more steampunk themed. But now all that's left to do is for me to put on the plague mask and try this on. Yeah, so overall I'm pretty happy with the way this turned out. I didn't have to actually go and spend any money outside of the foam and glue and paint. And hopefully this will help give you guys some ideas for your own costumes and cosplays. You could probably use this same concept for a myriad of other hats for other characters, not just a plague doctor. But hopefully this inspired you and gave you some ideas. And as always, have a great day, and thanks for watching.